Welcome to FinTech Fun Talks. We have an exciting guest today. And for those of you that are just joining the podcast, we are Copper Canvas Ads Agency, and we specialize in helping FinTechs scale their revenue in a 12-month period. And so today, our guest is Patrick Miller. Patrick is the Director of Business Development of Government Services and Solutions at Cedar Financial. So, Patrick, thank you for joining. And could you give us a bit of a background on your path into the fintech industry and what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. I really officially started in the collection space in 1994. Prior to that, I was working for the Los Angeles Times for quite a bit of time, part time, and then when I was in college, they put me on a management track and paid most of my freight for school, which was great. And I began learning the technology call center stuff. Back then, it was old fashioned smile and dial, and I participated in figuring out how to convert a bunch of offices for the LA Times to technology driven. So that kind of got me in the call center space, and I switched over to call centers and collections in 1994 and when I left the LA Times, and I've been in this space ever since. So I've seen the whole evolution of the technology for sure.
Yeah, and that is an interesting thing to see, right? Because I think where we are at any given point, we feel like there's so much to do technology-wise. But those of us that have been in technology for quite some time, we see the amazing strides that have been taken. And so I'm curious about how your work has evolved, particularly with government agencies.
So I started focusing on government at my last employer around 2015, 2016, thereabouts. Prior to that, I did a little bit of everything: healthcare, government, bank card, commercial. But I originally started in the call center space for collections on the operations side. So I had to learn the technologies, and I've seen that AI now is like really becoming a main focal point in assisting us in a lot that we've done. So I was early adopter of AR for call monitoring, transcribing calls into text and then examining the text for keywords and phrases and looking for opportunities. Yeah. So, AI is like all the rage right now, but I've been leveraging AI in the call center space for a decade now. So,
Interesting, right? I feel like it's been renamed. It's been named artificial intelligence, but it is something that those of us in the tech world have been using
mhm.
to our advantage for quite some time. And so I think with the new name, it brings with it some anticipation and maybe some fear that some people have that it's just going to take over. But in using it for so long, it feels like, no, it's been a companion. It's been a partner. It's been something that helps to improve things and make your life easier, especially with some of the mundane tasks or with the things that are very manual.
Everything's more automated. I just think
Yeah.
of my I hate to say gift, but I guess it's a gift. No matter what technology has been unfolding, even since I was a young college kid, is to find ways to leverage it and just work smarter. And
Right.
now that I'm in, the business for 30 plus years of satisfying, helping clients, my job is to find out and think, we already have this technology in the company. How can we use it to benefit the client further? So I get one example of my last company. I'm not going to say the name of the client because I have permission to disclose, but it was one of the national internet providers. Um, so they were struggling kind of nationwide on customer service, and the sales front end was creating, I'll say this is like misunderstandings with customers. So by the time it got to the collection end of the scale, the lifetime of an account, we had people, customers telling us, yeah, but they said it was going to be this, that, and the other. And we complained. So I instructed my team. I said, you know what? Let's record a lot of these calls for this client and transcribe them to text, and then examine the data after we've done a few thousand calls to see how many times these particular complaints are arising. So we put that into a specialized report, and I presented it to the client, and they turned around and went back to their front end process, meaning customer service, sales, and it's on the front end of each relationship, and used it as a training tool. They went back and re-geared the front end of their process, um, which benefited them greatly. I mean, it meant fewer accounts coming to me on the collection end because you had more satisfied customers staying on with the service. That's okay. We don't want to deal with disputes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it very much benefited the client, so much so that they had us kind of do a road show and present it to different regions. But that's just one example of we were already using the AI in one of these call monitors software systems. And I'm getting this feedback from the collection floor or whatever. And I'm thinking about my client and I'm thinking, let's leverage this and find a way that we can, it's one thing to just go to the client and say, well, we're having trouble collecting your accounts because everybody's a dispute or there's too many disputes or whatever.
Yeah,
You have to be able to provide the case and then provide them with, well, here's a suggested solution, So that's just
absolutely.
one example. I'd disclose the name if I could, but I don't have permission.
Yeah, I know. And we want to respect that, right? We
Yeah.
want to respect their privacy. So that's just fine. But it still gives such a picture of what is possible, not only with AI, but just with having that data collected and then being able to make wise decisions based on what you see in front of you, which changes your whole business overall. Yeah. And that takes me into the next question that I have for you, which is that Cedar Financial is often described as a market disruptor. And so, what do you feel like sets you apart from others in the space?
Well, even though we're a smaller, what I call mid-sized agency,
Mhm.
our founder, Amir Arez, is his big passion is technology. And he was in software development and SAS long before we became established as a
Mhm.
service provider in the call center collection space. But so he's always trying to be on the cutting edge. It's one of the things I liked about the company when I researched it and looked to join. So some of those things are, the use of bots to control certain processes. We leveraged AI before a lot of other agencies did to come up with using AI to examine data and determine scripting. And we do a lot
Okay.
of SMS texting. So we're omni-channel,
Mhm.
SMS, email, and so on. The only area we're kind of behind the ball on is chat. We have a beta chat right now with a few clients, but that'll primarily be at first to be support directly with our clients, not with consumers, but it'll eventually go there. But these technology things that we have, such as, we have a payment portal that we designed ourselves that can literally do everything that a consumer would need to do with a live professional agent. I mean, there's literally nothing that they could do with a live agent that they can't do on their own in the portal, whether it's on a smartphone or computer or tablet, whatever. And that was pretty cutting edge. And then using AI for analytics, we're doing a ton of data analysis to do what I call A/B testing. So, change the subject line to an email or a text, or change some of the verbiage and letters from here and there and see which ones get better responses, and then track the data accordingly. And we're also using, subscribe data to things like we'll know when a person is what time of day or day of the week they're more likely to be on their cell phone based on data analytics coming from providers. And then we kind of basically use that to drive when we're going to do more calls, reach out by text or email, all those kind of things. And so we've, dramatically, some cases, depending on the client portfolio, doubled, engagement rates.
Interesting. And so you have the proof of utilizing those types of technologies and information to improve your business. I wanted to make a comment about your tech portal and the fact that you said that really there's not one thing that you could do in talking to a human agent that you can't do on the portal. And it's interesting on some, and I won't name names, but on some, and they're big names, you're just in a loop and you don't end up going anywhere. And it is so frustrating because I
That can
know that
be
they're
a
trying to
can be a
streamline.
common challenge with automatic chat.
Yes,
So you reach
exactly.
out. I do this all the time. Like I'm a consumer just like anybody else. So I've got places I go and do online chat. And you get stuck in some death loop where the topic you're really trying to get addressed isn't already in their data set. So they
Yeah.
just don't know how to respond. So it gives you its best guess and loops you back to something else that, nope, that's not what I needed. And then you get frustrated.
Yes. It's so
Well,
frustrating.
I was talking about one of my gifts from early on is just like, for a stretch, I left the collection space and was hired as a consultant at first to open up call centers to support autotrader.com. I went out and visited all these different offices. And I wanted to figure out what it's like to be a user on the site and just figure out what's broken and come back and find a better solution for that. And I was eventually put in charge of a whole product development team over there. Even though I don't come from a product development background, I could take what customers were complaining about or what they need and put it in layman's terms to the tech team and then figure out, well, what's that going to cost us and can we monetize it and does it make sense to do it? But then layman's terms translate that back to the sales force out across the country and say, this is how you explain it. Here's the WIFM. This is what's in it for your customer. What's in it for me, right? Cost is one thing, but too many people focus on features. What's the benefit to the customer?
Mhm. And is it what they're asking for? That is one thing that has frustrated me a lot during my career because you'll have a big group of people asking for something, but maybe it's not on the roadmap or you've got other priorities. But at the same time, it's like, but they're asking for this. I want to talk a little bit about Cedar Financial targeting 30% annual growth. And that is really ambitious. That's quite a bit. What is fueling that momentum?
What do they say? Hot off the press. This is a relatively new goal. Pretty wide, it's a goal. I have achieved just in my space about 25 to 30% annual growth. So we're trying to figure out how we take, there's about 3 of us on the team that have really done that, achieving 30% or greater annual goal. So we're just really dreaming big right now. We're coming up with all kinds of ideas and it's going to kind of upset the apple cart a little bit internally because I want to be really driving, marketing ideas and things for and how we're going to hold on and maintain happy existing clients. So I did that at another collection agency where I took over as general manager, and they were looking at 30% annual turnover of clients.
Wow.
Finding new money is a lot more expensive than holding on to happy clients. So my goal was to get that above 90%. So we did a variety of things. So I'm going to be talking to them about all these different, I mean, if we're going to actually get 30% annual growth sustained, there's going to be a lot of other departments within the company that are going to have to really fire on all cylinders. You can have 1,000 guys going out there and pound the pavement. If you're not good at building good relationships, you're not taking care of the clients, who cares if you keep turning people over?
Right.
When I started with the company 4 years ago, we're a certified micro small business for the state of California. So my initial strategy was, let's focus on California-based clients where there is a consideration, extra points in the evaluation, if you will. You still got to win on all the other technical backgrounds. So now I've developed in 4 years' time around 20, 25 clients that are, some of them are the top clients in the company now. And
Oh,
now we're
cool.
starting to bridge those. So we've picked up government contracts in Georgia and Florida and Pennsylvania, Texas, other places like that.
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned client retention being such an important element. Couldn't agree more with you. I want to pick your brain on it a little bit. What are some of the best ways that you have found to retain clients?
Well, some are more obvious and some are less, but probably the ones that are more obvious is be responsive to their needs. And when they have a question or a concern and they communicate, you go radio silence for 24 hours to an email, that's not good. When I first came on, I kind of had to take the client services group that helped my clients and coach them what I think my clients need. So it was cool. And one of the guys, Sage, love him. We work together every day. He's great. All our clients love the guy, but he's client service and support. So he's gotten really good about, all right, if I can't get the detailed answers to this question within 24 hours, at least I'm going to drop you an email back that says, hey, Christy Nelson, we really appreciate you're a client. I have to get with so-and-so department. So give me, another 24 hours and I'll get that answer for you. Or if he has the answer right now, and just get it, turn them around quickly. I initially started that by making sure my clients were copying me on everything. So I was just kind of in the know. So it doesn't happen all the time that way now. And then my model is the salesperson, especially if you're working on a larger, more prestigious, what we call a large marketplace participant client. So I'm talking to my clients at least once a quarter. There's some clients, depending on where I'm at in a process. Like I've got 2 large government clients right now that I'm in the middle of boarding new projects. I'm on the phone with them every week for ongoing meetings until things come along. And then, once they feel comfortable, you hand it off completely to client services. That's fine. But so number one is communications. Communicate, be accessible. They're emailing or they're dropping you a voicemail or something. If you don't respond, people have a tendency to think the worst. They don't care about you. They need to know that you care and respond as quickly as you can. The second thing is once you get to know them, I'm coaching my team to anticipate what their needs might be before they even call us.
Okay, interesting.
So like right now, I've got a couple of clients that things will happen and I recognize, that's going to be an interesting situation. And I get together or contact the client and say, informing you we're making this change or I'm doing this to get ahead of this curve. So we've been getting more, references or even letters of recommendations where they'll say, wow, they just, they anticipate our needs. And when I have something I have to bring to them, they respond quickly.
Mhm.
If they bring a challenge, have a solution. I've even had a time one time it was a major client. It was about a tax collection thing. Had a tax collector or a taxpayer contact a newspaper outlet, big national news outlet, and tried to do a nasty, tax collection story on it.
Yeah.
And it was all bogus in the sense of, I mean, the calls were all recorded and everything was handled on the level. And the client in that case, I wrote up how I would discuss it. And their PR person for the government agency contacted me and said, will you write a response for us that we can send to the newspaper? I'm like, okay. So just being professional and realizing that, they've got to be careful, especially, when I sell to government, some of these things are approved by city council or mayor's office. So obviously performance always matters. In our space, you have to have a really great compliance program in place to make sure there's not going to be any compliance violations and that the consumers have to be treated with respect and care and professionalism. I mean, everybody comes up with their taglines and ours is putting people first. Um, but from being in front of clients and presenting or selling them, if you will, I've never worked for an organization where I felt more confident that that's the case because we've actually acquired more than 400 consumers. These are people that had to pay a bill, a past due debt, who've given us a positive review, on the website, on our Google reviews. I tell people, I tell my staff, particularly people that come in are going to be collectors. Nobody ever woke up one day and say, oh, this is great. One day I'm going to have more bills than I have money. Hoo-hoo, look at me. Circumstances are, for whatever reason, usually a combination of their own situation, decisions, whatever, and other influences they had no control over. So we have to be empathetic, very empathetic. And every now and then you get what I call the professional debtor. All they do, get a credit card, charge it until it charges off, and they're never going to pay it. But they're so rare. They're just rare. So, and everybody, regardless, should be treated with respect. The last thing is really, you have to constantly be evolving. You have to constantly finding ways to either improve the performance or improve the client satisfaction or improve engagement with the consumers so that they'll call you back and have the conversation. Innovation is the key, So to be honest, one of the reasons I left the LA Times way back when I was in charge of innovation for team and they just stopped innovating. They didn't want to innovate anymore. Like the internet was coming and I'm like, the newspapers are going to be online. They're like, nah, they won't. I said, okay, I'm out of here. So I just took off, and then I joined this industry.
And I'm sure you could see the writing on the wall at LA Times, but not everyone does. Obviously, the fact that they were willing to say, no, what we have, we've mastered it. This is perfect as it is.
Yeah,
We
the
don't need to
moment you
change it.
say, "Oh, I've arrived," you're done.
Yeah. Like there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing in our personal lives, in our personal growth, with our companies, with innovation, as you mentioned. There's no such thing as having arrived. And people naturally will demand more of the companies that they work with, and they will demand that innovation. That's smart advice that you've given. What is the most important to you when it comes to building those long-term relationships with your clients?
Well, this might sound a little odd, but I think in my experience, it's to be able to make some sort of an emotional connection. And emotion is primarily driven in any relationship by trust.
Yeah.
You build trust or you violate trust. Even internally and, inside the other supervisors, managers that I've had to mentor, I tell them all the time, every relationship is like a bank account. And if you make more deposits into a bank account, it becomes more valuable. It becomes more precious. If you have too many withdrawals, it starts to dwindle the bank account. So sooner or later, with every person, whether that be a client or an employee or a family member, sooner or later, there's a serious something comes up and you're going to have to make a withdrawal. You're going to have a difficult conversation. I want to make deposit, deposit, deposit so that when it comes time, I have to have that tough conversation. They know it's coming from, they trust me, first of all. They know it's coming from a place of, I'm trying to do what's best for both of us, even if it's going to be a tough thing to suggest. And I've been able to, come to clients and say, I really think you need to do this. And if they feel like that's true, but they can't champion it, but they need to talk to their senior folks, they pull them into a meeting and I just become, champion of what needs to happen.
Exactly.
So I'm always trying to show this is how you're benefiting from us. Or every time I come up with a new idea or some new approach that we think is going to improve stuff, we include the client and here's what we're thinking. This is what we're thinking about doing. What do you think of this? Usually it works out well. Rarely they might say, no, we can't do that because of such and such policy. But most of the time it's some innovative thing that they go, haven't thought of that. Let's try that.
Yeah. You don't learn until you test and see if something is going to work. One question I have for you, I know you have some experience with scaling, and something that I feel like can get lost when a company is scaling or growing, especially in a quick way, is that level of service and trust and relationship with the clients can tend to be watered down a bit.
Mhm.
What is a way that you can ensure consistency in that service and trust as you scale?
Well, there's a variety of things that I've done over the years, and they're a combination of things that are outward, like when
Mhm.
I'm talking with the client or sharing with the client, or things inward that I'm trying to manage difficulties inside the organization without having to let the client know because I'm going to handle it. Right.
Right.
All right. So one of the call centers I ran back when we were signing on these huge projects where we were going to have to scale up 20, 30, or even 40 full-time agents at a time.
Mhm.
We had to have relationships in place with various organizations that could source us potential employees. And everybody has to look at their own individual market. So at that time, I was in the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area, and I developed relationships with these organizations. There's a lot of military bases, more military bases there than there are any place else in the country. So you got these military families and the spouses need work. So we did were these networks that could quickly find people. And then you had to have a really sworn system that locked system you knew could train people well and get them up to speed. And then you had to have enough people that you could overflow from other areas to be able to pull resources here and there, whether that be call center agents or IT support or client support, etc. And my goal was to do it and tell a client, we can start your new project, and I can guarantee you that at least 70% of the agents that start your project will have at least 2 years experience in the industry or more, and make sure that you have the capacity. So it's to communicate what's going to be the capacity needs. I do that now with every project I board. How many people are we going to need, whatnot. So if I'm in the contract award phase and it's probably not going to start for 30, 60, or 90 days, I'm immediately getting with my internal team and say, here's what's coming. Here's going to be the capacity needs. What do we have to do? And then work through them to help them get that done. And then, your clients just need to know you can handle the volume, right? I've had relationships, like I've got one right now. I'm dealing with a potential partnership, and it's one of these things that could, explode your volume.
Mhm.
And, they said, well, let's walk before we run. Let's take a certain chunk of one of our divisions and have you do that, and we'll scale up and see how it goes. Well, I've done that too with clients in the past, but the trick is to be honest. I've had people in the industry that I knew in the past, nobody at my current company, like, oh man, this is amazing. And they're just like, just tell them we're going to do it. I'm like, we're not going to be ready, and we're going to fall all over our face, and all this long-term great money you're thinking about is going to just disappear because they're going to be mad as a hatter and they're going to
Mhm.
let us go, you know? Um, and it's good to be into a place where you're trusted, where they know you're the go-to person. The last company I was at, we acquired another company, and they were one of several competitors on a particular large client project, and it was a
Right.
bank. And the bank called me and said, Patrick, you're our top producer out of the, 8 or 9 vendors that we use. The last place vendor is a company you're buying right now. I just saw some sort of a press announcement. Yeah, we're doing a merger acquisition. He goes, well, we were going to fire them because they're so poor. But if you're taking over them and you're my number one guy, I will wait to see if you can go over there and help them turn it around. So I ended up being the guy from the new owner company that went in and told everybody how to fix things, which is always fun, right?
They love it. Yes.
But I just told him, I said, I wasn't planning to do this. The company didn't ask me to do this. The client called and asked. This client was in the process of firing you, and they told us, we won't fire them if you can go turn it around. So here I am. Let's figure this out. But to be in a place where your relationship is trusted so much that they can trust you with a piece of information like that with the hopes that you can fix something they see as broken. And of course, we turned it around and it went well.
It is an interesting thing, and I imagine that for me, I imagine that would have been a bit intimidating, not really knowing with this acquisition a lot about the company, but saying, "You know what? Yeah, let's give this a try. Please let me go
Mhm.
in and see how we can change this and try to."
Well, like I said earlier, I get bored. So
Yeah, there you go. So it's an exciting challenge, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it's always good when it works out and people are happy and you feel a sense of accomplishment, not just for myself, but for my team.
Absolutely. It had to be a big win at that point. I'm sure that you felt a big sense of accomplishment. One final question for you before we end. I was wondering if you could change one thing, one misconception that people have about the collections industry, what would that be?
Um, I came in the early 1990s and was part of the tip of the spear of I call maturing and cleaning up the industry.
Mhm.
I give you a perfect example. You're probably familiar with Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great guy. Got my son did his, debt free whatever program and all that. He
Mhm.
gives solid advice. But I met him at a conference one time because from the stage he was telling anybody, don't answer any calls from collection companies. They're all scams. Said that. He said that. Yeah, he said that. So it was just like, go to the exhibit area. It was at this conference and his team had his Dave's Ramsey booth. And, oh, come over. We're going to sign books. So I bought one of his books and I said, oh, I have a conversation with you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yeah.
I said, that's not who we are. We are no longer Guido, the arm breaking repo man. And I said, I don't want to call you a liar because
Mhm.
you have your conceptions. I said, but I invite you to spend time with me and some other folks in my industry, many of which who respect you. Use your resources and listen to you speak many a times. I even went through a men's group where we used the Dave Ramsey program for a thing that we did.
Oh,
And I told him, I said, just come and talk to us. We're honest, hardworking people, and we're not out here trying to break people's arms or, force them further into debt or whatever. We want to help them. And if that means applying for a debt consolidation program is going to be the next best thing to bankruptcy because there's no way they're ever going to be able to pay, then
mhm.
we accept that. And we might even, my last company had a relationship with a national debt relief group. And
Okay.
we set up a program where people would be funneled over there through an online application process. And if they qualified, then my banking client would be like, okay, that'll work out fine because the debt resolution group will figure out some sort of a settlement. And, like I said earlier, nobody wakes up one day and says, hey, this is great. I'm going to have more bills than I have money. Woo. So our industry doesn't operate that way anymore. I mean, there were a couple of old school guys when I started in the early 90s and they didn't last very long. They thought they were cool because they could harass people on the phone. That doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist. And if it does anywhere, they get jammed up by the CFPB or, the state attorney general's office or whatever. The people don't mess around. They know they can go online and say debt collector harassment in a Google search and get 27 lawyers that are willing to file a lawsuit against somebody. If it does happen, it's only with the rare group of idiots out there who just won't last in the industry. They won't last. My biggest thing that I wish would change is still the misconception that somehow debt collectors are, what's the joke? Bus full of lawyers in the bottom of a lake is a good thing. It's a bus full of debt collectors in the bottom of a lake is a good thing. No, it's like,
Right.
no, we're good people. And we have bills to pay and families to feed, and we understand what you're going through. And some of the best debt collectors I ever had who are people who had to navigate how to get out of debt.
It gives
Yeah.
them a level of empathy
They
that
had
you wouldn't
understanding and
otherwise
experience.
have.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I remember those days when, the debt collection reputation was horrible
Yeah.
and you were
And
scared to
I
get those
should say
calls.
it's now ARM, it's accounts receivable management. I still call it we're a lot more than just debt collection. I mean, we're first party outsource, we're early intervention in all kinds of areas, whether it be healthcare or commercial or, whatever. I have a lot of clients end up like giving them consultation on, you really need to revamp your credit application process so that you don't have as much delinquency coming out the back end.
Yeah.
So we're there to help them figure out how to reduce their days aged, not figure out how to create more debt, you know, whether that be for my client, who's the service or product provider, or consumers that we're dealing with that are help them get out of debt and hopefully don't get back into debt.
Exactly. And I think that attitude that the industry overall has, but I would say especially Cedar Financial has, will really change the way people view not only the industry, but their own situations and the
Mhm.
difficulty that they're in and the options that they have to get out of that and to
Yeah.
get into a better place in life.
Yeah, it's like our FinTech portal. We got all kinds of people that will go and they're too uncomfortable talking to a debt collector, but they'll go on
Yeah,
to the
that makes
portal.
sense.
Well, that is increased, resolved accounts for our clients because some people are, I don't want to talk to a debt collector. This is embarrassing, or or they're going to be a jerk, or, so these preconceived things, or it's just, I mean, being out of money and a bunch of bills to pay can wreak an emotional wreck on people, you know?
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants it. Everyone feels ashamed
Yeah.
about it.
So
Yeah.
the whole idea with the fintech is, all right, you don't want to talk to a person? We can still help you out, and we can still help the client get the account resolved, and we can still help out the consumer. They can just do it all through the portal, you know? So,
It's a win-win.
yeah, exactly. There's an emotional aspect to every industry. So, and it's all the relationships, too. It's trust, reputation, all of that. Those are all emotional based realities.
They really are. They really are. And I think realizing that in an industry where before it was just a matter of, look, we just need to collect this, but
Mhm.
then changing that narrative to be something that like these are humans. That it is an emotional thing. I'm sure it's changed the industry. So, Patrick, it's been really great speaking with you today and getting your insights and knowing a little bit more about your company and the collections industry in general. So, thank you
Yeah.
so much. We appreciate
Well,
you
thanks for
joining.
inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our podcast today. I'm Kristen Nielsen. I'm the owner of Copper Canvas Ads Agency, and we partner with FinTechs to help them scale their business within a 12-month period. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I've seen how saturated the market can be, and therefore how difficult it can be to make your business stand out in a sea of other FinTechs that may look similar or maybe even slightly different, but how do you make yours stand out? How do you get your message to the right people and those with high buying intent? That's what Copper Canvas Ads Agency is here to do. We are a growth partner, and we take a deep dive into your business to really understand what your strong points are, where there may be areas of weakness, and how we can fill those areas of weakness and create a plan to move forward in a strong way and really scale. So if you are interested, simply go to our website, coppercanvasadsagency.com, and schedule a time. There are buttons right there on the front page for you to book a time, and then we'll love to talk to you and see what we're able to do together.